Okay, this is the second video in our series about connecting sensors and outputs to our Raspberry Pi. In the first video, we talked about connecting a simple digital sensor, like this touch sensor. And if you didn't watch that, go back and check that out to understand why it is we're wiring this the way it is, what this thing is with the ribbon cable and going into the Raspberry Pi. I'm going to move the Raspberry Pi off the screen. We're going to focus on the breadboard here. And I'm going to talk about connecting a digital output. In this case, it's this buzzer right here. And I've already wired this up. And you can see that the digital output, this buzzer, has once again a VCC pin and a GND pin. And it labels its third one I/O. And if you look closely, you'll notice that they are not in the same order. So don't ever take pins and assume, oh, it's going to be VCC, GND, I/O. They could be in a different order, and if you don't pay attention, you can damage your sensor. I happen to use a white wire, a white jumper wire for I/O this time, but other than that, I'm using red for VCC again and black for GND. You'll also notice when it comes to connecting them to the Pi interface board right here, I had to plug both of the red wires into the same row on the interface chip right there. And so they'll just both plug into two of the slots in that row right next to 3.3 volts. And we're starting to see why having one of these things is handy, because there's no easy way to do that on a Raspberry Pi, to plug two jumper wires into the same pin. Okay, so I already have that wired. This is going to be a pretty short video because what we're going to see is that getting an output to work is almost the same as getting an input to work. So once this is wired up, let's take a look at the code. So here we are again in our code editing window, and you can see that it looks fairly similar to our digital input code. We have a couple lines up at the top. We're going to bring in some Python packages. We're going to set up our pin, only this time you can see that the input has been replaced with the word output in several places. We're also using, if you notice carefully, a different pin. And why did I pick 6? I don't know. It's what I had in my program right here. And I made sure to put the white wire to that pin on the breadboard. And then our loop in this case, which is going to loop forever, is going to do something slightly different. Instead of reading the pin and deciding whether to type out high or low, it's going to send a high signal to the pin, print out that that's what it's doing, and then it's going to go to sleep. In this case, it says 3 seconds. I think I'm going to change these just to make this a little bit more visible of a demo. I'm going to change these to 1 second each. So it's going to turn it on, go to sleep for 1 second, turn it off, go to sleep for 1 second, and of course then it's going to repeat over and over and over again until we tell it to stop. So let's go to our terminal window now. And in our terminal window, we will tell this program to run. So here we are, and this program I've named digital_out.py. And if hold on. I think I've missed that. Well, I'm feeling a little bit silly. This entire time I've been telling you to wire these to 3.3 volts so that you don't use the 5 volt and accidentally damage your circuit, and I had them in the 5 volt. The 3.3 volt side is actually on this side. And now, with that wired in the correct place, our buzzer is doing what it's supposed to. It's turning on and off every second. I took the little protective sticker and I put it back over the buzzer because otherwise that buzzer gets awfully loud. There we go. Now, you might be wondering, okay, that's great. I can turn. We better tell that to stop because that's getting a little annoying. You might look at your code and say, that's great. I can read a sensor, and I can turn on an output and not turn it off. But how in the world do I do those two together? Well, that's going to be part of your challenge here as you work on this project. How in the world can you combine these two programs into one? So here's our output program right here. And here's that input program. And my suggestion to you is if you need an input to control an output, that you think about what you could do inside these if statements right here to determine whether an output should be turned on or off. That's it for this video right here. We will continue on with our third video showing us how to connect an analog sensor to this board right here, which turns out to be a fair bit more complicated.